We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, hello there. It's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking today. Now, we've had weeks, haven't we, of is he going to do it, isn't he going to do it, windfall this, windfall that? Well, we know where we stand. Rishi has shown his cards and a bailout package has been announced. I want to be looking at that, but more importantly, I want to ask you, what do you think about it? Has he done enough? Are you satisfied? Are you happy? Should he have done more? Or has he even gone too far and done too much? And will there always be some people that are just never happy, no matter what the government do? Moving on from that, there's been a warning that ambulances are approaching a Titanic moment that could stop them responding to 999 calls within weeks. What is the answer to all of this? And are you worried about it? If you needed to dial 999, how would you feel? Would you feel that you're going to get an ambulance? Or would you be more tempted to kind of try your luck with a taxi? And do you have children? If not, nieces, nephews, godchildren? Do you know what they are being taught in school when it comes to sex, relationships and gender? And crucially, by whom? We'll have all of that to come, but first, the latest news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. And our top stories today. Shares in oil giants BP and Shell have risen despite government plans to introduce a 25% temporary levy on the energy firm's profits. Shares in BP rose 1.8%, while Shell gained 1.1%. The Chancellor announced his £15 billion support package to help with the cost of living earlier on. Well, in that, 8 million of the most vulnerable homes will be receiving a one-off £650 payment, with a separate one-off payment of £300 to pensioners. And on top of that, a £150 to those people claiming disability benefits. And the energy bills discount, due to come in from October, will be doubled from £200 to £400, and the requirement to pay it back is going to be scrapped. Rishi Sunak's levy on oil and gas firms will raise $5 billion over the next year to help tackle the cost of living crisis.
I know things are difficult and people are worried about the next few months. That's why we've announced today £15 billion of new support to help with the cost of living. And I'm focused on delivering for people, and that's what today was about. And the timing of today is because we now have more clarity about what's going to happen to energy bills in the autumn. We heard from Ofgem earlier this week about the potential scale of the increase, and that's why we took decisive action to provide £15 billion worth of support to help the country get through the challenging months ahead.
Well, the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, criticised the government for taking so long to back what she called Labour's plan.
For months, it has been clear that more was necessary to help people bring their bills down. So what took this government so long? Every day that they have refused to act, £53 million more added to Britain's household bills during this cost of living crisis. This government's dither and delay has cost our country dearly.
In other news today, Acting Police Commissioner Sir Stephen Howes has defended the Metropolitan Police's investigation of the Partygate scandal. Speaking before the London Assembly's Police and Crime Committee, he said there were full files of evidence behind each fixed penalty notice.
Many of the photographs that we are seeing look bad, and Sue Gray's report has dealt with that. We deal with the law, not what looks bad. And just because there is alcohol present, can I just remind people that the COVID regulations are about breaching COVID regulations. They're not about whether there's drink there or not.
8 more cases of monkeypox have been identified in England, according to health officials. It follows the first case of the virus being recorded in Wales and Northern Ireland earlier on today, with a further 2 cases being discovered in Scotland. The UK Health Security Agency say the new cases bring the total in the UK now to 90, and it says despite the rise in cases, the risk to the overall population remains low. The Crown Prosecution Service has authorised 4 charges of sexual assault against Hollywood actor Kevin Spacey relating to 3 men. The CPS has also authorised a charge of causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent. The charges follow a review of the evidence gathered by the Metropolitan Police in a previous investigation. The alleged incidents took place in London and in Gloucestershire between 2005 and 2013. The actor not yet formally charged, though, as he isn't in the UK. News from the United States now, and the Texas gunman who killed 19 children and 2 teachers was reportedly inside the primary school for up to an hour. The suspect, 18-year-old Salvador Ramos, was armed with an assault rifle when he locked himself in a classroom and opened fire. Just minutes earlier, he'd posted an online message warning he was going to attack. A British man's been jailed for 18 years for trying to smuggle £160 million worth of cocaine into the UK on a luxury yacht. Andrew Cole from Stockton-on-Tees, who has links to an international organised crime group, was aboard when his yacht was stopped 80 miles off the coast of Plymouth. The UK Border Force and the Australian Federal Police recovered more than 2 tonnes of cocaine. US media is reporting that Ray Liotta, star of the 1990s American blockbuster Goodfellas, has passed away. The 67-year-old found fame playing Ray Sinclair in the film Something Wild, but is best known for his portrayal of Henry Hill in Goodfellas, directed by Martin Scorsese. His representative said he died in his sleep. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News, and now it's time for Michelle and Dewbs Co.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
And before Michelle, a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound 1.249 to the dollar, the pound 1.173 to the euro, and the price of gold currently stands at £1,467.98 an ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, keeping me company. Until 7 o'clock tonight, my panel, we've got Head of Lifestyle Economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Christopher Snowdon, author and academic, Joanna Williams, and environmental policy researcher, Laurie Leibon. Good evening to you three. And you know the drill by now, don't you, I'm sure? It's not just about us, it's about you as well. What's on your mind tonight? Get in touch with me, gbviews at gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at gbnews. Don't forget, if you haven't already, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, download our app, our podcast, and as I always say, we're on the radio as well. You see, I do love a little bit of modern technology. If you're sitting there thinking to yourself, I like Michelle, but I need to go to the shop, as I always say, worry not. Take me with you. Go into your car, DAB+, look under the letter G, and there we are. It's magic. Modern technology, eh? You love it. Right, what was I just about to say to you? I was just about to go into a very elaborate story about a completely random topic, Christopher, and I think, do you know what? I'm not going to. I'm going to get back on track and do the top story, which is all about the bailout. Did you see it? Have you been following the kind of ups and downs about windfall taxes? Should we have one? Shouldn't we have one? Is the government doing enough to help us at the moment? Should they be doing more? If so, what more? And around it's gone, hasn't it now, for weeks? And we finally have got some answers and a bit of an end to it, because it's a yes to a windfall tax. This is going to help pay for a £15 billion support package that Rishi Sunak has announced. You've just been hearing all about the detail of that in the news item. And I've got a poll running, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, on Twitter, if that's your thing, GB News. I'm asking you, do you think Rishi Sunak has done enough? Did you want to see him doing more? I'll start with you, Christopher. What do you think to Rishi's announcements today? Enough? Too much? What about the windfall tax? There's a lot to unpick. Your thoughts?
There is, indeed. I mean, Rishi, I think, has realised that he was very popular 2 years ago when he was giving people lots of free money, and he wasn't so popular when he started putting up taxes to pay for the debt. So he's gone back to giving people free money, and that's been the policy, really, of the government, various governments, for about 15 years. Every time you have a problem, whether it's a financial crisis or Brexit or COVID, you print and borrow vast sums of money, and as a direct result of that, particularly the enormous amount of money printing during COVID, we have very high inflation. The priority for the country has to be to get inflation down. There are no easy solutions at this point. Everything you do is painful. If you just let it ride, then people have the cost of living crisis. I mean, they're going to have that anyway, realistically. I think that if you're going to have a windfall tax, he's done it about as well as you could do, because he's given the companies a big incentive to invest. And the danger with windfall taxes, you put off investment. But the windfall tax is only going to raise £5 billion by the government's own estimates. In practice, I don't think it'll even raise that, because they will put billions into investment. And the whole package actually is worth £37 billion. So essentially, we've got a big problem, which is high inflation, and we're going to dump another £37 billion into the economy. Will that lead to more inflation is the big danger. Insofar as we're giving it to people on low incomes, probably not, because they'll spend their money on the gas and electricity, you would think. Why we're giving £400 to every single household in the country, I have no idea. This should be means tested. This is just a giveaway. And there is a real danger of that causing inflation. So,
but it's going to, I thought it was going to be credited to their account, the energy accounts. I didn't think we were just going to give them free money.
My understanding is we're giving them free money, and so we have to hope that they're going to spend it on their energy.
Right, I'm going to get someone to check that while we're talking, because my understanding, and I am,
well, that would be good if they do that.
Frequently wrong. Let's be honest about this. There's a strong possibility that I'm indeed wrong now, but I thought it was being credited back to the energy.
Well, if that's right, then fair enough. I mean, that would be a more sensible way to do it. Absolutely. But either way, for middle-class families who don't really need this money, they're not going to spend £400. The £400 is going to go on their gas bill or whatever. They're still going to have another £400 to spend, which they wouldn't do otherwise. We are expanding the money supply, having massively expanded during COVID. That causes inflation. We're not going to get inflation down by dishing out more money. And I think actually the real danger, above and beyond all that, is it's only May, right? This cost of living crisis has barely begun, certainly in terms of people heating their homes. Is the government just going to give in to everybody who puts a hand out? Are we going to be giving 10% pay rises to the rail workers, for example, for everybody in the National Health Service? They probably will. They seem to very quickly give in to anybody who has any kind of sob story.
Well, Donald says, this is all madness, Michelle. The Tories have lost my vote. Laurie, where do you stand on it all?
I think it's welcome that he's taking, he's making more action. The actions that he announced in the past were a bit of a damp squib. It felt a little bit like at the very early stages of COVID, before lockdowns and things, where he did this budget. We all thought, hang on a minute, that doesn't seem to be proportionate to the scale of the challenge. So I think it's good that there's more money. I think it is an energy bill discount of £400 this October, but in addition, a payment of £650. Which will be paid through means-tested benefits to 8 million households, right? And, part of this inflation is something that's come externally, right? It's the costs of energy, food and other things that have been stimulated by Putin's invasion of Ukraine, by the ongoing effects of COVID-19, if we're talking about food as well, by the increasing impacts of the climate crisis. And households are going to need that kind of support. This is another shock that's hit the country. And one of the things I think, beyond providing people with more support, which is needed, and we've got to understand that that support is coming on the backdrop of a history in which money's been taken away from people's benefits. It's kind of making up for some of the damage that's already done in the past. We've got to break this link between...
What money's been taken away? What we're on
as in the down-rating of benefits and so on in the past has damaged the safety net system in the UK. So it's kind of, trying to edge towards repairing some of that, and I don't think it goes far enough. But we've got to make this break between being vulnerable to some of these shocks that come from outside. Energy prices in particular, we're exposed to that because we have some of the least insulated buildings stocks in Europe, say, in this country. And we've got to invest some of this money from wherever it comes from into insulating those homes so we're not as exposed to these huge swings in energy prices and other things.
Well, just before I bring Joanna in, we speak about this kind of insulation thing often. We all are very familiar, Laurie, with the protesters and stuff like that. And people will always write in and say, why is it a government's responsibility to insulate somebody's private home? Why isn't it the private homeowner's responsibility? Why does everyone want the government to do absolutely everything?
Because, well, sure, and in some ways it is, right? But as a tool of policy, like, what's the point in government, right? It's this big institution that can do things at the scale of a society. And those protesters you mentioned, they were largely focusing on the climate crisis, and that's something that needs to be focused on. In the case of, say, Putin's war, we can better isolate Putin by insulating homes. And if the government can come along and say...
But we hardly even rely on Russia for our oil and gas. We get a small percentage.
Sure. If you're Germany, you've got a very high percentage, and it's more in those frames. But it's a general process of us becoming less dependent on, or less exposed to, these kind of shocks. Because Putin's invasion, reliance on Russian oil and gas is one thing. It generally is creating higher prices across all energy markets. So if we're using less energy through more insulated homes, that's a good thing. I think it's totally proportionate in that context for government to step in and help accelerate the process of insulation.
Well, Joanna, Peter said, Dewbs, Joanna Williams is back. I thought you'd sacked her. She's the best guest on GBNews. No, we didn't sack her. She's been cheating on me. You've been doing breakfast instead, you little minx. Right. What's your thought on all this?
Well, I agree with what Christopher's saying, that the government has been relying on printing money for decades now. But I think it is worth pausing and just reflecting for a moment at how completely unprecedented this is, that the government is making. I've already had £150 this year as a rebate off my council tax. I'm going to be getting £400, it seems, in October off my fuel bills. I'm not complaining. I'm feeling the squeeze financially. There's certainly a few more days at the end of each month now to try and that I'm noticing when I go to check my bank balance. But, I've got a middle-class professional job, so has my husband. It's absolutely shocking that we are being given these state subsidies, and even more shocking that we're in a position where we're welcoming these state subsidies because the cost of living crisis is so extreme. I think COVID has made us very kind of reliant on these state handouts, or thinking that these state handouts are kind of normal, that we should get this. But really, it's a drop in the ocean. It's no solution to the long-term economic problems that we're facing in this country.
Do you think there should have been some form of opt-out then? So if someone's financially comfortable, instead of everyone getting this help, do you reckon there should have been some mechanism And OK, yeah, I've not thought through it enough to decide what that is, but for a mechanism for people to be able to actually, I don't need this.
Not really. I mean, potentially, yes, if people don't need it, then they should put it back. But more the point I'm making is that we're in such a dire economic situation that even kind of middle-class people on good incomes are needing this money. We are noticing the food bills going up, the fuel bills going up, and that's what's shocking. That's what's really terrible, that a good income, 2 people full-time employed, is no longer good enough to provide a decent standard of living. And what we've got to do, I think, as a country is really face up to that big economic problem, the lack of productivity, the lack of economic growth. And unfortunately, Laurie, you know, it's laughable to think that this can be solved by us better insulating our houses. We need to look at actually producing more power, cheaper power, like major changes we can make to economic productivity in this country. We should have been building nuclear power stations 2, 3, 4 decades ago. We need to now be drilling North Sea oil. We need to be fracking and producing gas. We need major inputs into the economy to give the whole economy a shock, to boost productivity, to boost wealth, so that people don't have to be reliant on state handouts just to see them through from one month to the next. That's what's really shocking.
Do you want to respond to that?
If we insulate homes, we'll use less energy, so we'll be exposed to less of these energy price fluctuations. Also, if we fracked, that gas will be sold on what are not just the domestic markets, but markets that are bigger than that. So we could, if we nationalise the energy industry in the UK and then frack the gas, we might be able to keep it in the UK itself. So maybe we should nationalise the entire energy industry.
If you want to get involved with fracking, why do you need the government to nationalise that?
Because the market is not just within the UK. So when let's say we went and fracked, we got some gas, which is very difficult to do in this country, and even if the local people wanted it, which they don't, and even if it didn't have environmental impacts, which it does, even if we got it out of the ground, we would then be like, right, well, we want to make some money out of this, so we'll sell it to the highest bidder. We'll sell it at the international price, which means it's not going to stay in this country. Like, you can frack as much as you like in the UK. It's not going to stay in the country. It will be sold on international markets unless you nationalised the energy industry in the UK, so it had no choice but to remain in this country, right? And then even then, all that effort and money and time, you could have insulated the housing stock in the UK, so we were less dependent on these.
Well, Nick's just emailed me saying, Michelle, I've had my home insulated, and now he says it's too warm. So now he did. That's, you can see that. I'm telling the truth. That's what Nick has said. Chris, a lot of people are agreeing with you what you've said as well in terms of their concerns about this kind of making the inflation situation worse. And we've just been mentioning the North Sea situation there. BP had previously said about windfall tax, that actually if there was a windfall levy, they would still stick with their investment. Well, what I found interesting today is that BP kind of came out and said, today's announcement is not for a one-off tax. It is a multi-year proposal. Naturally, we now need to look at the impact of the new levy and the tax relief on our North Sea investment plans. So something that sounded like it was pretty dead set before is now potentially up for a question. Which doesn't surprise me, because I've always had a little bit of a concern. I see the logic of why people want windfall taxes, but it makes me slightly concerned that you've now changed the goalpost massively in this country when it comes to the economy, because previously you knew when you started your game of football, you knew the rules, and now what we've basically said is, don't worry about those rules. If you do well, or we decide, actually, I like a little bit of that, you give me some of that, we will. And if I was a business owner thinking, right, where shall I invest? Where shall I start a new business? That would make me slightly apprehensive about doing business here.
Well, that is the traditional worry about windfall taxes, and I think it's well-founded in some instances. I think it's probably less well-founded in this particular instance because it's considered our gas, our oil, right? It's in the North Sea, and governments, including Margaret Thatcher's, have done windfall taxes before. I mean, I don't know what to make of BP's own official statements. I think they need to work on their comms, because the guy who runs it was a couple of months ago saying that BP is a cash machine. This is fantastic. Because,
he did say that.
The war had begun in Ukraine. And then a couple of weeks ago he was saying we're quite happy with windfall tax, won't make any difference to us. And now he's saying it's a terrible idea. I don't know. But I do know.
Now it's now become clear it's a multi-year. So what we're saying is $5 billion.
It's going to be at least 3 years, I think, and it'll end when oil prices and gas prices go back to normal, whatever they are.
Whatever normal is. But also, are you in favour of windfall taxes?
Yeah, I think it's a proportionate thing at the moment. I think we have to remember that the top rate of tax on North Sea oil and gas in 2015 was much higher than Rishi Sunak's just made it. It was even higher in 2014. We also have to remember that something like 10 billion of the profits that BP, Shell maybe made recently, they used to buy their own shares back instead of investing.
Yeah, buybacks. Buybacks are quite common, but would you?
It's about raising the price of the. That's not. You can't sit there and be like, oh, well, we may not invest when you're using that money to artificially inflate the price.
But where do you draw the line then when it comes to windfall taxes? Because in this instance, for example, we're talking about energy, so that's gone up, and what people are saying is you've had an unintended windfall. You didn't really earn this. It's global factors that have given you this increase, so we're going to take it, 25% of it anyway. Where do you draw the line then? Pharmaceutical companies, they've had a big boost from nothing that they've actually done in many cases. Delivery companies, we've now got this massive war in Ukraine. We've got all of these companies that'll be manufacturing weapons, armoury, God only knows what. They will have a massive boost in their profit. So where do we draw the line?
A big question is how much we accept very profitable industries imposing these big markups of making their prices higher to exploit the current moment, to engage in profiteering, right? Like, for example, the 4 agribusinesses that control about 90% of the food system are charging not just the prices of how much, but prices have been raised by how much things are costing, and then they're raising the price above that as well, right? So I think that is an open question. Right now, we're focusing on oil and gas. I don't think we need to impose a general idea of windfall taxes onto things. And I think that it's proportionate to do that in the current situation. These guys have expected that for a long time. You see that in the share price that has in fact gone up, as we saw in the news segment there. This was internalised for a long time. I agree the comms are messy, partly because they've known about this for a long time. They knew it was going to happen. They actually have enjoyed a period of many years where they paid way less tax than they have. They've had a very generous tax and subsidy regime in the UK, one of the most beneficial in the world for oil and gas. This was going to happen. They've internalised it, and I think it's.
But I think, if I may say so, the important thing to remember is that it's a window dressing to try and make it look like this is costed. We're talking about 37 billion, an absolute maximum of 5 billion we're going to get per year from the windfall tax. The real tax rise is going to be down the line when we're all having to pay back money that we've all been given. It's just literally in one pocket, out the other, plus interest. And the Bank of England's not printing any more money now. Finally got the message, and that's inflationary. So we're borrowing money on international markets. Inflation's at 9%. Do you think people are going to be lending us money at decent interest rates? It won't be.
And then don't forget, of course, we've got to pay back our monumental national debt, which is all well and good.
We'll never pay that back, but we'll be paying the interest for it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That when your base rates are where they have been, that's one thing. When they go up, it's a whole different thing altogether. Jenny on Twitter says, in 1975, Michelle, interest rates went up to 17%. Our mortgage payment went up by 25%. She says the Labour government did nothing in mitigation. We were just expected to suck it up. Trevor says, I had to suck it up in the 80s. Mortgage rates again, he's saying 16%. I had one wage, 2 young children, and I just simply had to do without. I didn't ask the government for help. Why would I? That's what he asked. That's what he's asking. Eleanor says, Sunak has hinted that he will go even further, and they appreciate at least that he is now doing something. My favourite email, probably of all time actually, comes from Nicky. He says, Michelle, I've converted some workmates over from Sky News to GB News in particular. He says, Richard, who loves the show, and apparently he loves me and the way we present. And apparently, I don't know why, he loves the way I say, by the way. So, by the way, Nick and Richard, you've both got the same surname, but you're not brothers, apparently. Lovely email, much appreciated. And by the way, it's time for a break. When we come back, got lots to talk to you about. I want to talk about children. Do you know what they are being taught at schools when it comes to the whole kind of sex, gender, relationship and all that kind of stuff? And get this, ambulance bosses are warning that August is a tipping point when 999 calls can no longer be answered. We'll have that after the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Coming up on The Mark Steyn Show, the biggest threat to freedom of speech online. Toby Young will be here to discuss the growing calls to scrap the online safety bill as MPs plough ahead with plans to censor the internet. MP Kevin Hollinrake joins to discuss Home Office plans to allow up to 1,500 male migrants to roam free in Linton-on-Ouse if an asylum centre is placed there. Yasmin Mohammed will also be on hand to explain what it means for the small Yorkshire village and whether it poses risks to those living nearby. All that and more on The Mark Steyn Show, tonight from 8 o'clock.
Hello there, welcome back with me, Michelle Dewberry. Keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight, we've got the Head of Lifestyle Economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Christopher Snowdon, author and academic Joanna Williams, and environmental policy researcher Laurie Laybourne. Good evening to all of you as well, wherever you're joining us. You can get in touch with me, gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs with any of your thoughts. Peter has been in touch today saying the announcement today was a missed opportunity, Michelle. What they should have done was to remove the green taxes, not be borrowing more money. And Martin says, Michelle, when are people going to start cutting their cloth? I am not middle class and I am not struggling. I just cut my cloth accordingly. Well, there you go. Let me know your thoughts on that last topic we've just been discussing, which is Rishi Sunak doing enough to help you? We've got a poll running on Twitter. It's about 50-50% at the moment, split. Some of you think that he's doing enough and some of you think he is not doing enough. Can he ever do enough? Will anyone ever be happy? Sometimes I feel like they wouldn't. But if you're sitting there saying, yes, I'm happy, let me know. Right, Mark, August the 17th in your diary, little diary dates, because apparently that will be the day that you do not want to be calling an ambulance. The reason? Well, apparently a lack of beds available in hospitals is now reaching a tipping point. Ambulance services are already missing response targets, as we know. And this is all about basically when patients arrive at the hospital in their ambulances, there's nowhere to put them, so they spend hours and hours just sitting in the back of the ambulance. And this prediction of a day of doom comes from the West Midlands Ambulance Service, who say it's much bigger than not just hitting, or missing, should I say, their response targets. You know, I'll start with you on this, Laurie. This conversation, it's been going on for a very long time, hasn't it? NHS problems, ambulance problems, people not getting an ambulance. But there's something about this. I mean, I've got to say, personally, I find it a bit weird that someone's come out and put a particular date on it, so specifically August the 17th. This is when doomsday, basically, when it comes to ambulances. But notwithstanding that, what do you think what is the answer?
Well, I think let's. I'm not going to try and explain what this guy's saying because I'm not totally sure. He says that around August 17th, it will be the date in which a third of our resource will be lost to delays. What I think is going on there is think of a hospital like a system where you flow water through it. If the beds fill up, then the ambulances can't take the patients to the beds, so the ambulances queue up, and then people are sitting in the ambulances and so on. And that's what I think he's saying here. And I have a very close friend actually who works who work for an ambulance service and experienced that a lot, where ambulances would queue back and we get this horrendous situation where people were not getting the care that they needed, right? I think we've got the immediate thing of the shock that COVID caused to the NHS as a system, how that led to huge spikes and people having to be in hospital. It basically caused a massive amount of demand that the system couldn't take. We've got a longer-term problem of there having been underinvestment in certain areas. Beds as an example. The number of beds was going down at the point where COVID came and we really needed those beds. There's not been enough investment in nursing. There was a massive shortfall in nurses before COVID came along. We're not getting enough investment in GPs. We've got a low number of GPs across the country, which means that they're not able to properly triage, to properly sort of sort people at the beginning of the flow before they're then resorting to have to use ambulances. And then
you say about beds, by the way, in COVID, I remember there's what were called Nightingale things, hospitals that were set up with tons of beds, pretty much empty the whole time.
But this goes to the starting problem, right? Like, in some ways, the Nightingale thing was just for show, to kind of boost the morale of the country, I would say. Because what do you...
Really?
You
you're telling me that they sat there and thought, you know what, I'm going to boost the morale of the country by building a hospital and keeping it empty?
I think that was an unintended consequence. I think it was a case of saying, you know, the Chinese government, China can respond in this way, Britain can also respond in a certain way. You got a bed, right? You need three things to help people in hospital, right? Roughly. Bed, the kit, ventilator, whatever, and the people. Very easy to get beds going. Kind of easy in some ways to get the ventilators going, very hard to get the right people, particularly in the context of COVID. You have to have very specialised training to be a respiratory nurse, and you ideally need one-on-one care, one patient, one nurse, right? So in some ways, the Nightingales were there to be like, whoa, the beds bit, amazing. But the problem is that we reached COVID with a shortfall of something like 40,000 nurses at a moment where we really needed those nurses. So the NHS is suffering from that underinvestment. And then, of course, longer-term problems like so-called non-communicative diseases, obesity, other lifestyle problems that we know are saturating the NHS. So this is a hugely complex thing that cannot, of course, be dealt with just some more funding. But in the case that we're seeing here, if this ambulance provider, who we should, rely on to be talking about how severe the situation is, they need some immediate help to deal with some of that backlog, and that the people here will be overworking. It's an exhausting, very tough situation to be in. We should be very thankful to those who are on that front line, and they do need some immediate support to help ease that pressure. But we need to deal with that chronic underinvestment.
Someone just emailed in while you're talking saying, "Oi, Michelle, tell me the name of this gorgeous man sitting to your right again who's talking. Get him back more often." That is Laurie Laybourne. There you go, we're making blush. And while he's recovering from that, Chris, where do you stand on this? Because often the answer comes back from people, doesn't it? More money, more investment, more money. What do you think? Is it the case of more money, more complex,
or what?
So much
money now, it's getting ridiculous. It's £230 billion of the NHS budget last year, plus another 40-50 billion pounds on private healthcare. If you look at it as a percentage of GDP, we're spending more than nearly any other country in the world now on healthcare. You cannot blame this on underfunding. It has been a deliberate decision, not just in the UK, but in the UK, in the last 35 years, we've halved the number of hospital beds, despite the population rising significantly, because a lot of very clever people who work in the health service decide, actually, we don't need beds, something as old-fashioned as beds, and we don't need people getting better. They can go home and get better. And you're quite right. Obviously, what you need in hospital, primarily, doctors and beds and equipment. And we've got about a third fewer doctors than comparable countries. You compare it to the OECD, Club of Rich countries, about a third fewer doctors, half as many beds as we used to have, and far fewer beds than OECD countries. It's an absolute scandal. And I just wonder, where is this money being spent? Where's it going? We haven't got the doctors, we haven't got the beds, therefore we have massive waiting lists, 1 in 9 people now on a waiting list. You've got this problem with the ambulances, and people in the NHS will say, well, it's bed blockers. The real problem is people in bed not needing to be there. There is an issue with that, but what you could also do is have more beds, and then you could tolerate having 10% of your patients being bed blockers.
But it's not the NHS's job. If someone's fitting well enough to go home...
They've got nowhere to go. It's a social care problem.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not the NHS's responsibility then to be almost like a daycare service for people, healthy, well people that have got nowhere else to go.
No, of course, it's not in an ideal world. But the fact is they haven't got anywhere else to go. Yeah, maybe we should be spending a bit more on social care. We're now being taxed for it, after all. But the bottom line is, and it's not just with this issue, it's with so many issues across the NHS, there are far too many chiefs, not enough Indians, and there's not enough hospital beds.
Joanna?
Yeah, I agree. This is not just an issue of money. I mean, the NHS has got such huge problems, and yet for years, really, we've not discussed these problems. We went out and banged our saucepan lids and clapped for the NHS and kind of worshipped it without really getting to grips with what the problems are. Criticising the NHS was kind of a taboo that you weren't allowed to do. I actually think the specific problem in this case is the shortage of beds, but that's hugely contributed by well people who could be discharged, taking up beds in hospitals. And I think we do really need to look more closely at why people aren't being discharged. And I mean, I agree with Christopher, one easy solution would be just to make more beds, you know, and have everybody who's got nowhere to go taking up a hospital bed. But actually, you know, people don't really want to be in hospital. I'm sure a lot of these well people want to be moving out, want to be getting on with their lives. So we need to look at why can't people move into care homes, for example? Was it a mistake to have the vaccine mandate for care home staff? How many care home staff were lost to the profession at that point because they didn't want to have a COVID vaccine? Is that something that's worth revisiting? What about the pay for people who are working in care homes? I'm sure for a lot of people who work in care homes, if they think they'd be paid more by working in a coffee shop or working checkout in a supermarket, they're going to look at what's expected of them in a care home compared to what would be expected of them working in a supermarket and think, actually, I could earn more and have an easier job elsewhere. So perhaps we do need to look at paying people who work in care homes more, making it more incentives to create more care homes. I mean, you go back far enough in history and there were actually kind of special convalescent hospitals. Where I live in Kent, you see on the coast, these kind of huge buildings that were once special places for people to go and convalesce. Perhaps it's worth bringing back something like that so you've got a halfway house between a kind of hospital and being released. But the point is, you know, as Christopher's saying, you've got so much money going into the kind of bureaucracy that we're not able to take the step back and actually look at providing these kind of solutions.
Nick, he's just got in contact on Twitter saying, regarding the ambulance crisis you were talking about, Michelle, my lad has been trying to secure a place at university on a paramedics course and he's not been able to get in yet because there's not enough places available. And this is a problem when we talk about staffing levels. You know, these people, there's a whole funnel of things that need to happen before we can even get someone onto that front line. But Laurie, I wonder, do you think that we take caring as seriously as we should as a profession in this country? Because if we all kind of concede that actually there's people that shouldn't be in hospital, that should be, say, for example, in a care setting, I know that there are people that say I'm a stay-at-home carer, the carer's allowance is a pittance. I'll know that people will get in touch with me and say, I want to work in a care home, but the wage, that's a pittance. Do you think we place enough respect on the role of being a carer?
I think that people respect it. If you went up to anyone, they'd say, I absolutely respect that. But I don't think that is reflected in what has been invested in. I agree. I think, in effect, we don't respect them because there's not enough investment in caring, in social care. And I agree with what's being said down that end of the table. Let's be honest, like, we've got a national sickness service, probably, that's about dealing with immediate acute instances of sickness. In some cases, there are some elements of excellence when it comes to dealing with various other things. But a national health service would make proper sense if it had this deeper social care element to it. And we don't, if we're talking underinvestment in the health service bit of it, we've had extraordinary underinvestment in effect in the social care part. I think there needs to be it doesn't make sense unless you've got a national health and social care service as an overall package. And we move beyond the chaotic situation that we see with social care in the UK, privatise, highly expensive, anyone who's had to pay for care, particularly, say, for elderly relatives who are nearing the end of their lives. And it's astonishingly expensive. And you think, well, hang on a minute. The money's clearly not going on the wages of the staff who are hugely overworked. Many of those premises, it's clearly not going into the investments in the premises themselves. Where on earth is it going? It's seeping away in these exploitative companies who are able to run around in the sort of wild west of what social care is like in this country.
I think that's a bit harsh to say that all care homes are exploitative.
I didn't say they're exploitative. I'm saying that with all the huge amount of money that's taken, that people have to pay because they want to care for their loved ones at certain points in their life, is it going toward those people's care to the amount that we think it should? And I think that's a big open question. I think, for me personally, we've we're very proud in this country of our public healthcare system. I think we should continue to be proud of that, and I think that principle should be extended to social care as well.
We need to remember that the national insurance increase that we've all just taken as a further hit to our pay was sold to us as money that would go towards social care. Well, of course, none of it's gone into social care so far. It's all gone into the NHS.
No, but to be fair to them, what they did say is it was a social care increase, but initially, they did say to us, initially it would go on sorting some of the ills in the NHS, and then it was the more longer term.
The NHS is never going to give up that money.
Yeah, I think the NHS needs root and branch reform, and I'm always wary. People will write in and say, you know, that the nurses, the doctors and all those kind of people are doing their best and that we shouldn't be attacking them. And I completely agree. My mum and sister are both NHS nurses, so this is not about attacking the frontline staff and the job that they do. This is more about the institution, the framework, the processes and all the rest of it of the NHS. Stuart says, please can you stop pontificating about underfunding of the NHS, because you're completely ignoring the colossal waste and inefficiency that seems to go on unchecked in the NHS. I've got to say, Stuart, I agree with you, and I personally wouldn't give the NHS a penny more until I'd done a proper root and branch reform of it and a review and try to make it more fit for purpose. But let me know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk, or tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBnews. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have some more of your thoughts. And I also want to ask you, do you know what children are being taught about in school when it comes to relationships, sex education, gender, all that kind of thing? And whose responsibility is it for defining what they should be taught and doing the delivery? Is it teachers or is it outside agencies? We'll be looking at that in just a couple of minutes.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight with me, Patrick Christys. As the woke radicalisation of our children continues, I'll speak to the teacher ejected from his position and cancelled for speaking out against the harmful impact of lessons on race. Plus, it's a night of unfiltered opinion from political firebrand Anne Widdecombe, social media sensation Zuby and writer extraordinaire James Melville. And as ever, my superstar panel will be on hand to break down those headlines. They are Conservative commentator Dominique Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and author and journalist Amy Nickel. What's not to like, people? That's Dan Wootton tonight with me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m, right here on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
On GB News, we're celebrating the Queen's Platinum Jubilee with 4 days of special coverage between the 2nd and the 5th of June. Join us live up and down the country, sharing your memories from Her Majesty's extraordinary reign. Please send in your stories by emailing us at jubilee@gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews. We can't wait to hear what you have to say. GB News is the People's Channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight, my panel, Head of Lifestyle Economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Christopher Snowdon, author and academic Joanna Williams, and environmental policy researcher Laurie Laybon. Good evening to you three, and good evening to you at home as well. Lots of you getting in contact, saying that actually, many of you agree with me, by the way, about we perhaps don't respect carers the way that we should. When I'm talking about respect them, I'm talking about the amount that we pay in things like carers allowance, wages, for example, in care homes. Please do keep your thoughts coming in. John has been saying, Michelle, people have been talking about NHS reform for years. Of course, that's what it needs. He says there's way too many administration staff who are overpaid. A big sentiment coming through again. I mean, lots of people absolutely respect the frontline care workers, but it's just kind of the management. I think that's where the feeling comes from, that is where you need some reform. Anyway, sex education in secondary schools has been controversial, hasn't it, since it was made compulsory 2 years ago. But what is actually being taught? Some schools are apparently using outside agencies to provide the teaching materials, and there are concerns that some of these agencies could have a bit of a strange agenda, to put it mildly, about sex and gender. Some parents, Joanna, are quite worried at the moment. There's been campaigns here, there and everywhere about this topic. Where do you stand on it?
Well, I'm worried about it, and I think most parents...
You're a parent as well?
I am, and I think parents should be worried about this. I think we're right to be worried about it. Not, of course, I don't think there's anything to worry about in terms of teaching sex to children. The basic facts of life. I think all children need to know how human reproduction occurs, how babies are made. I think that's absolutely crucial and a key part of biology. I mean, clearly that has to be on the biology curriculum. I think the bit that's controversial is the bit that came in 2 years ago legally and has been in place a bit longer than that informally, and that's the teaching of relationships, because to me it's impossible to teach relationships without imposing values. And you can be an expert in biology, you know, you can have a degree in biology, you can pass on your subject knowledge, but no one is an expert in relationships. So I'm not surprised really that teachers are quite nervous about getting involved with teaching this. I mean, how do you even go about teaching relationships? It's a very, very difficult thing to teach. And you've got all these outside organisations then essentially preying on teachers' lack of confidence in this area, teachers' concerns, who are then being paid to come into schools and to promote their own agenda. And it's an agenda which is often led by campaigning groups who are promoting messages around gender fluidity, the idea that gender is something on a spectrum, that is a feeling that you have inside, and it's the responsibility of children to choose their gender. Really backward and outdated ideas, like, you know, if you like wearing blue clothes and playing with trucks and football, then that means you must be a boy. Whereas if you like dressing in pink and playing with dolls, that means you must be a girl. Now, those are really stupid ideas and dangerous ideas, I think, to teach children. And we have seen a huge explosion in the number of children coming forward seeking medical help with their concerns over their gender identity. And it does strike me that this is one reason why this might be taking place. So I think parents are right to be worried, because as far as I'm concerned, it's the parents' responsibility to teach children about relationships, not the school's responsibility.
Yeah, but all I'd say to that, Chris, I mean, in an ideal world, I agree with a lot of what Joanna's just said, but unfortunately, in this society, there are a lot of wrong-uns that are parents that, in my view, have got no business actually having kids. They're not good parents. They don't have healthy loving, respectful relationships at home. And then what happens often, domestic abuse cycles, whatever, people repeat often what they do see at home. So I think that in those kind of situations, I think it's quite helpful to teach kind of things like relationship values in a classroom.
No, I don't really agree. I didn't actually know it was compulsory. I mean, if anything, I think it should be banned. Sex education should just be half an hour in the biology curriculum. Birds and the bees, this is a condom, this is a pill, that's it, move on. I don't agree with teachers being taught into kind of turning into social workers. People are always demanding this be put on a curriculum, this be put. Let's have more climate change on the curriculum. Let's have insulation on the curriculum. Whatever. Let's just have economics and maths and English. Teach kids something that they're not going to get anywhere else. They can learn about relationships and indeed sex from all sorts of different places. And the fact that it's also led to a bunch of cranky weirdo pervert groups or whatever they are getting involved makes it even worse.
Laurie?
I find this a really difficult one. I don't have kids, and I therefore don't have much lived experience of what parents are going through here, though I can understand in some of the articles that we've seen today that there can be this concern about what children are being exposed to. In the past, if we look, I like to, at these sort of issues that are often couched in terms of culture wars, I like to look back in time at what things were like in the past, right? We, in this country, didn't talk as openly as we probably should have about sex, about what that means, as in, sexual relations. And I think negative things came from that, sort of from repression of talking about these things. I think that we have got better at talking about the fact that people are gay. And there was a time where that was obviously a really contentious thing at school. Now we're in this situation where we are talking about the complexities of a new set of issues that people are wanting to talk about much more. I don't think we've got the kind of rules of engagement for how we do that yet. And I don't have any sort of set of answers to what you do there, but I see stories like this time and time again where people are finding it extraordinarily difficult to be in these febrile atmospheres. Like we've got here in our pack a story from the Daily Mail about how intense some of these issues have got in school, with kids shouting at each other, with parents finding it very difficult and so on. And I'm just really struck that we don't have the kind of set of shared norms that can recognise the differing views here, that the need to talk about sex and how people have sex and the different ways they have sex and the pitfalls of this and the risks and so on in a way that deals with the complexities. I did some of this at school and was a sex ed trainer for a while, that we're able to talk about elements to do with gender and sex and identity that can recognise that, some people may not feel comfortable with certain roles that have been assigned, but we've also got a shared language we can talk about this. I can't necessarily offer any particular, silver bullets on this, but I'm just constantly aware that we haven't got a shared sort of set of rules of engagement and norms in this country around these issues. It's really difficult.
But that's exactly why we don't have these shared norms in the classroom, because we don't have these shared norms in society more broadly, because there isn't a textbook right and wrong as to how to conduct a relationship. This depends upon your own sense of morality. Perhaps it might be influenced by your religion. It might be influenced by the context, by the community that you live in, and the idea that there's black and white rules. Obviously, short of don't beat somebody up, don't hit people. You could stand in a classroom and say, now kids, when you grow up and you make a relationship with someone, be kind, be nice. But actually relationships are caught, not taught. The morality of how we conduct our lives is not something that you can learn in a classroom, kind of making notes.
Well, Tony has emailed in saying, Michelle, my daughter is a teacher and she had to show a primary school girl how to put sanitary wear on because her mother simply told her the teacher would help her. Whatever next, he asked. I completely agree, and this is one of my concerns in life. There are too many people that are not good parents, and if you're a good parent, then that's brilliant. You're going to help your child, teach your child, but what about the people that aren't? And if they don't get taught right from wrong and good and bad and all that kind of stuff at home, then where do they get taught? And people will say, well, it's not the teacher's responsibility, but if they don't get taught this stuff, then it becomes the problem of all of society. Hamble, by the way, you make a very good point. Patients, going back to the NHS thing, why don't we charge patients the deposit for attending accident and emergency, which they'll only get back if they have an actual emergency? That would keep the time wasters at bay. I like that idea. I wish I'd come up with it myself. By the way, Nigel asks, is Michelle any relation to Michael Dewberry? No, I am not. Anyway, that is all all we've got time for. So on that note, I shall leave it there. You lot have yourself a wonderful night. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Nigel Farage is up next.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather updates. The skies will clear a little overnight, which should allow a bit more sunshine for most of us tomorrow, but it will also allow temperatures to fall, so a little fresh first thing on Friday morning. Here's the bigger picture. High pressure to the south, low pressure to the north. In between, a fair few weather fronts drifting across the country. They've been bringing a lot of cloud today. This one is edging away to the south, bringing drizzly conditions and a lot of mist across the southwest, but otherwise pulling away, allowing breaks in the cloud to allow it to turn quite chilly. We will keep showers coming into northern and western parts of Scotland overnight and a fairly brisk wind here. Temperatures dropping where we've got the clear skies and lighter winds across the heart of the country down to single figures. Not far off freezing in some rural spots, so a chilly start to Friday, but by and large a fine day to come for most of us. Still some showers across Scotland, mostly north of the central belt, and even here they will tend to ease through the day, but still a few heavy ones possible. From the central belt southwards then, it's looking mostly dry, fine with good spells of sunshine. A warmer feel as well, certainly in the south, 21. Maybe 22 Celsius. During Friday evening, temperatures will drop quite sharply. The showers, though, will continue to fade from northern Scotland, so for most it's going to be dry and fine with clear skies as we head into the weekend. That's going to, again, allow things to be quite chilly on Saturday morning, but most of us will have a fine, bright, blue sky day on Saturday. Certainly lots of sunshine in the morning. The cloud will bubble up a little through the day. Small chance of a few showers in northeast Scotland, very slim chance of a shower over eastern England as well. But I say, for the vast majority, it's dry and bright on Saturday. Temperature's not spectacular, but feeling pleasant in the sunshine. Quite a cool feel again in the northeast with a fairly brisk wind. And for most of us, Sunday will be the cloudier day of the two this weekend and feeling cooler as well. Bye for now.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment,